Well, good afternoon. Today we're in a very short psalm, Psalm chapter 93, but it is really an important psalm, and there's things that we ought to remember. And Psalm 93 reminds us of some things that we ought not to let slip. He begins in verse number 1 that the Lord reigns, that is, he does rule. And notice he also says he's clothed in majesty, a word that really is kind of hard to describe. We don't use that word oftentimes in our culture, but it refers to his greatness and his glory. And then he goes on to say, as he's clothed with strength, and he girded himself. So you see right in the first verse, it is the Lord who is sovereign, that he rules in heaven and earth, and he is majestic, he is glorious, and he has power. In verse number 2, notice his throne is established of old, and then he says something about the Lord that's good to remember also. He is from everlasting to everlasting. It's interesting to note that his throne really cannot be challenged, it cannot be overturned, it cannot be defeated. If we were simply to look historically at the nations of the world, you can see oftentimes the throne and the rule has been overthrown. God's in control, and that's something we really, really need to remember. And I want you to see something very important here. As we go down to verse number 3, it says, the floods have lifted up, oh Lord, the floods have lifted up their voice. Now, again, what he's showing, I think, is that God has power and strength over the floods. All we can do, even in our advanced technological age, is when we hear the weather report that a storm is coming, a hurricane is coming, we get out of town. But here's something else we should look at here. He's not denying that there isn't storms in life, that there isn't chaos at times in the world. It's not denying the reality of evil. The floods do lift up their voice. The Lord, though, in verse number 4, is high, mightier than the noise of mighty waters. In other words, the things that we cannot control, the hurricane, the tornado, God can control that. He has power over that. And what the writer's trying to show us here is these forces in nature that we certainly cannot control. The ancients knew that, and we know it also. God has power and strength over them. He can calm the seas. Now, it's important, I think, to say this. Not denying the existence of trouble and turbulent times in life. That doesn't mean God is not in control. He allows it to happen. It happens not because he is weak and not control it. He allows that to happen not because he doesn't care. And we may be puzzled at times for the reason why, but the writer is telling us that God really is in control when we even think that he isn't. Now notice verse 6. Thy testimonies or decrees referring to his law, to his word, are sure. Notice he talked about his throne is sure, the world is established, his throne is established, it's firm, it's solid, and now he talks about his word. When you really think about it, that's how you really exercise control. When a new president comes into power, he exercises that power through his word, through law, through decrees. And this is what that verse is simply saying here, that he exercises, that is, God exercises his power and his control through his word. Actually, we really need to think about that what our attitude is to the word of God. And then he goes on to say, they are sure, holiness becometh thy house, the Lord forever. Short psalm, but boy, isn't it something we ought to really remind ourselves every day. The Lord is in control. He does reign. He has the power, the strength, and he is really glorious. We certainly need to reflect upon that. And so that's our thoughts for today. And I'll see you on Monday. We'll be looking at Psalm chapter 94. See you then.